Alright, in groundbreaking news, Sony has officially announced they're making a new console. To that I say, duh. Did anybody not know that? Anybody not know that was going to happen eventually? Rumor has it that it's 2019. We'll talk a little bit more about that in this Mediarant number 20. And also we're going to talk about the new Nintendo Switch. Well, it's not really new. It's more of a revision and what I think it's going to be. And that's heading towards in 2019 apparently, but here we go. We'll talk more about it right after the intro. What is up, my most amazing Media Man fans? This is the Media Man, and if you listen to my intro, if you heard what's going on, you know I'm going to be talking about Nintendo and Sony, but I'm also going to be talking a little bit about Microsoft and how I feel they did this generation, the positives, the negatives, and what they could do better with their next console, whatever that's going to be called. Scorpio 2, I don't know. I was one of those guys that thought that the Xbox One X should have just been called Scorpio because that's a really cool name. But anyway, let's start off talking about Sony, and in a surprise move to no one, they're releasing a new console. It's official. It's gonna happen. We all knew that, but now it's official from Sony, and I'm not really all that excited yet. Now, if you guys remember way back in one of my earlier episodes, I talked about how when the Xbox One X was announced, I wasn't excited, and I got it, and it is a fantastic experience. So I'm certainly not against new hardware. I'm just not in a hurry for it to get here. You know, I just picked up Dragon Quest XI, and that's, I think, 3 million hours. I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong. Spider-Man, God of War, that bunch of games that I'm behind on, plus all the stuff that developers have been kindly sending me that I need to catch up on. I mean, I've got so much stuff on that console that I need to catch up with that I'm just not looking forward to a new console, having to get new games and all that stuff. Even though I love getting new hardware, I just don't feel quite ready for it yet. So that's just my 2 cents. Maybe you guys are ready. Maybe you've beaten everything you want to beat on Sony's console for this generation. Although I highly doubt it because there's still more stuff coming out. But maybe you did. Maybe you're done and you're ready for the next thing. Now, one of the things I am excited about is the rumor is, and again, this is a rumor, underlying rumor many times, but the rumor is that they're going to use the same architecture as they did for the PS4. Now, does it mean it's going to be not much more powerful? No, not at all. It's like having an Intel board in your PC and going from a dual core to the latest i9 plus. Well, actually, that wouldn't work. You'd have to get a new motherboard, but blah. That's a whole different thing. But it's like upgrading your graphics card and your processor and all that stuff in your PC, and making it way more powerful and putting more RAM in it and all that stuff, but it'll still run your old games. It's kind of the same idea. I'm simplifying it, but that's basically the idea. And one of the great things about having the same kind of architecture is it makes it really easy to play old games, your old catalog, the old PS4 games, PS3 games, and dare I dream, PS2 games. One of the biggest struggles that Sony had this generation that I thought they really dropped the ball on, and I do love the PS4, just to be clear, but what they really dropped the ball on was their backwards compatibility. Some of you may not care, and that's cool, but I like to have one console that plays, all my Sony games. Really, if I can get one console that played all my games, that would be awesome, but yeah, that's not going to happen unless you have a super powerful PC and a bunch of emulators, which I don't recommend. I'm not recommending that at this point in time, but it would just make it really cool to be able to play my old favorites. Again, with the PS4, it had to emulate PS3 games, which were based off the Emotion engine, which was a super difficult engine for developers to use. If you've read any of the old developer interviews, things like that, they had some real struggles getting the best out of the PS3, which was a much more powerful console than the 360, but the games looked pretty similar because, and sometimes even better on 360, because 360 was easy to develop for and PS3 was not. Now Sony learned their lesson, and I believe the PS4 is an x86, and it's really easy to port things over from PC and all that good stuff, but not from their PS3 catalog, because that stuff was made for the Emotion engine. You know, so it's two different architectures there. So if they can do this, that would make me a super happy camper. I can play my old favorites. Yes, we still have a PS4, but the PS5 is not even real yet. But that would go a long way in getting me to be excited. But again, we don't know a whole lot about it. So a lot of this is rumor, and I think a lot of it is clickbait. I'm going to put it out there. I'm just going to say all these, you know, YouTubers going, PS5 is happening and woohoo. Yeah, okay. Sony said they're making a new console. Surprise. Let's not act like, you know, it's breaking news. I might be a little bit late on making this, but it's not exactly breaking news. I'm not telling you something you didn't know. So, but I will update you as things happen, as things are officially happening, as long as it's kind of fun to do rumors. But at this point, that's pretty much all I know about Sony's new console. In the meantime, I'll be diving back into Dragon Quest XI and Ni no Kuni, you know, because I don't want to go outside, apparently. Now, the other thing I want to talk about, or I mentioned, was the Nintendo Switch. I put new Nintendo Switch, but it's not really new. It's more of a revision, which I guess kind of makes it new, but it's not going to be a completely new system. Obviously, that'd be silly. But supposedly in 2019, and there's been a whole lot of rumor, and I don't know if anything's even been official from Nintendo yet. But let's dive into the rumors, and then we'll talk about what I think is really going to happen. And I do believe it's going to happen. Let's look at their history. You know, from the DS to the 3DS line and their handhelds, the GBA, they've always revised their handhelds, their systems. So one of the things that people are talking about is that they think there's going to be a new dock that is 4K capable. I'm not sold on this, and I'm going to tell you why. Here it goes. You ready? Okay. They're not competing with Microsoft and Sony. They haven't for a while. When the Wii came out, in terms of power, it got killed by the competition. But it sold more than both of them. It sold more than both of them because it had a fun gimmick. And everybody wanted it. Everybody wanted to buy it, non-gamers and gamers alike. And now, you know, fast forward, let's not talk about the Wii U. It had some great games, but nobody knew what it was. I worked at GameStop for a while, so I know this to be true. People ask me all the time if it was an attachment to the Wii. But they come out with the Switch. They did this right. It is a fantastic handheld / hybrid console. I love it to death. As you guys know, I have over 200 games on the thing. Developers send me stuff all the time. I love the fact that it has so many indie games, and you know, I still want their eShop to be better and allow me to buy some N64 and GameCube and some of the older titles. But otherwise, I've just had a blast with the system. I love the system. But I'm not going to be surprised, you know, if they announce that yes, they're making a new one, because you just look at their history and that's how they roll. So the rumors have been, you know, like the 4K. I just don't think it's going to happen. I think that you know, I think it's more issues than, you know, they probably want to deal with, especially because the Switch is doing just fine. You know, and putting, you know, people with the old system and putting it in the dock, you know, is it going to melt? I mean, how's that going to work? Is you have to buy a whole new Switch if you want the 4K dock. I think there's a lot of different things that I think are just going to be a headache for Nintendo. Now, what I think could happen, and the other rumors that I've heard, is a bigger screen. For those who don't know, because maybe you don't have a Switch yet, you're saving up for one, or you're just not interested. The Switch has pretty big bezels. If you don't know what the bezels are, that's basically the simplified term, the plastic around the screen. So they have lots of room to actually kind of remove the bezels and make it all screen, and that would make it a bigger screen, an XL screen, if you will. I think this could be very possible, and I would definitely go for something like that because I do play it all the time. The other rumor is a 1080p screen for the handheld mode. Now the system itself already does 1080p on a regular TV, so you're already getting high-def Mario and high-def Zelda, which for some people they're into 4K already. I have a 4K TV, so it doesn't sound like a big deal, but I've always loved Nintendo characters. Ocarina of Time is still my favorite game, so the idea of playing Nintendo characters even in 1080 is cool to me. So, but getting back to the original, you know, a 1080p screen on the road would be pretty cool, but they would definitely have to do something with the battery. You know, there's a lot of different packs you can get to, you know, attachments to the back of your Switch to make the battery last longer. But the fact is, playing something like Zelda, you get about 3 hours. So if you had a 1080p screen and they didn't do a whole lot with the battery, it's going to die a lot quicker, maybe like an hour and a half. I don't know exactly how that works out. Plus the heat, it'll put a lot more heat. So I think if they do a screen, a bigger screen and a high definition screen, or 1080 screen, it already does 720. I think that's going to go along with a more powerful processor. Now, I don't think we're going to have Nintendo Switch XL games, you know, only for the XL, only for the Nintendo Switch, you know, new version 2019, whatever they're going to call it. But I do think we'll have a more powerful processor so that when you play the games in 1080, it's not going to kill the battery. It's going to be a better processor, so it's going to have longer lasting battery, as well as you know, the games are going to run smoother. Some of the games that maybe stutter on the handheld mode will just run smooth. So I think something like that'll happen. I mean, you know, so it'll make it a brighter screen. I've heard they're going to do some OLED panels, so they'll be more sharper, if that's a word. So those are the things that I think are going to happen. Again, as far as the 4K, I just don't think it's going to happen this generation. You know, again, Nintendo doesn't need it, and it would be, I think, wasted resources for them. Not that I don't want to see Zelda in glorious 4K, but 4K isn't exactly saturating the market right now. Not everybody has it. I mean, I love it. I'm super glad that I have it for my Xbox One X. But it's not in everyone's house now. It's not even 50%. So I just don't see them investing in that at this point. I think it's going to be a 1080 screen, and I think it's going to be a bigger screen. I think they're going to get rid of the bezels, and I think that's about it. So that's my thoughts on the Nintendo Switch rumors. You know, I will do a follow-up when I know a little bit more. So before I wrap up this particular media rant, I do want to talk a little bit about Microsoft. First of all, I got to give them props for their backwards compatibility. I mentioned it earlier, you know, Sony really dropped the ball when it came to backwards compatibility, and Microsoft, you know, picked it up and ran with it. You know, I've been playing games like the original Crackdown on 360, Jade Empire, Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, Black, a really great shooter from way back in the day on Xbox, the original Xbox. So I have just a ton of games that I can play in my backwards, you know, in my old school collection. You know, which is good because one of the things they didn't do, I think, that well this generation was the amount of games you can only play on the Xbox. A lot of them I can get on PC, and I'd rather play them on PC because I can mod them, especially if it's Fallout 4 or Skyrim. Now, they do have the most powerful console, and it is a fantastic thing. It is a treat to play this thing. and to turn on Dolby and have your surround sound headphones and play it on a 4K TV. It just looks and sounds great. It is a fantastic experience. It really is. But the games aren't something I can't get on other consoles. There are a few. If you're a racing fan, Forza is still the best. Gears of War 4 I thought was very underrated, a fantastic game. So there's a lot of good stuff on Microsoft's console, but most of it's third party and you can get it on anybody else. So hopefully next year, next generation, they come out swinging, and maybe the rest of this generation. Anyway, that's about all I have. I love you guys. Thank you for joining me for this Media Rant number 20, and I'll see you in the next video. Love you guys. Peace.